So we probably have time just for one more topic.
So-
I got the 10-minute.
Okay, so there's always a concern about protests, but again, when you do your evaluation selection plan and you lay out what your evaluation criteria is going to be and it's solid and you follow your process, there's nothing to protest.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we've got a few topics we could hit because we've got like 4 or 5 left. We've sort of spent so much time on interesting discussion. So I think we already talked about communication a little bit already. So I'm going to, you guys can choose. Performance-based contracting, different type of contract mechanisms. I know Mike has some things he can say about that and others as well. The other one I would look at would be terms and conditions and their use as a risk tool.
Those two are related because you use performance-based to minimize risk, and we'll let you talk because
Poor guy
we're
sitting
hogging
with
the
3 women.
The expert.
All right, so talk about performance-based or non-traditional.
Oh, gosh, we've only got 10 minutes
2
left.
minutes.
2 minutes. Okay, so I'll give you guys just a quick rundown of my experience with performance-based contracting. So some of the elements are actually not that different from just regular contracting. So FTB has a long history, and I'm very proud. And certainly everything at FTB I look at as a team sport, right? So all the way down from our executive management to our technology services division to our business folks in filing and accounts receivable and audit to us in procurement and budget and everything. So, in the early 90s, our chief information officer and a few other folks within our organization said, hey, we need to look at different ways of starting to do some of our procurements for our tax systems. So they worked with DGS and some other departments there to come up with this performance-based contracting model, which was a little bit different than the standard RFP model. It's still a competitive environment, but you formulate business relationships, partnerships with the bidder pool out there. So we were doing things 20 years ago that I think we could still be doing more of today, forming quality business partnerships with the vendors, qualifying vendors. They have to meet certain criteria in order to become a bidder. Then we work very closely with them during the solicitation and the bid development process. And it's really important that you have that communication with them, because really where we're going with that is we're saying the state of California sees an opportunity for a new tax system. But here's the deal. We're going to go in this with you and we're going to share the risk. So we're going to let you propose some things. We're going to tell you some things. We're going to let you propose some things. And you are actually bearing some of the risk. And what that really means is if these benefits that you tell us are going to come in, then you get paid. If the benefits do not come in, you do not get paid, or it takes you longer to get paid. So we looked at that as a really big incentive for them to put their best people on the project, to make sure the project got done timely, to make sure that they were using good project management on the project. So over the course of, I'd say, about 20 years, I was counting this last night from an old report that I had, we did about 4 performance-based contracts or benefit-based contracts, whatever you want to call them, for our business entities tax system, our collection accounting system, our accounts receivable system, our integrated non-filer collection system. And the total amount of those contracts was about $84 million, $85 million, but the benefit that the state recouped was about $650 million. So we looked at that as a win-win for us and the vendors. To us,
Finance, look at that.
oh, they looked at it great and said, what else can you do for us?
Yeah.
And I don't joke about that because they came in the early 2000s and said, hey, we've got this other project that we want you guys to work on, this child support collections contract. The state of California was one of the last to get our child support system up. So we'd done so well, and I'm very proud of my agency for that, that they came along and tapped us on the shoulder to do the state's child support system procurement and implementation. So fast forward 20 years, I had mentioned before, we're right in the middle of our biggest tax modernization project. It's called Enterprise Data to Revenue, and EDR, which is what we call it, is just the first phase. So we started planning probably back in 2007 for how are we going to modernize our tax systems as we go along. So fast forward from 2007 to 2014, we are modernizing our tax systems. We are re-engineering some of our business processes. We're building an enterprise data warehouse. The bottom line is we've got a contract that's valued at about $401 million, and we're about halfway through the project, so we paid out almost half of the funds, about $200 million, and I don't know if I'm stealing anybody's thunder of something we may hear later, but the benefit of the total project is supposed to be about 4.7 billion, with a B, at the end of the project, and we're right. I don't know if we've surpassed it yet or we're coming close to hitting the $1 billion mark. So we've shared that risk with the vendor. The money's coming in, which is good, so everything is going very well, but we've got some very detailed baselines on our tax systems. We've got 33 different compensation rules that say, here's every rule that must be met in order for you to get paid. There's revenue targets. If they don't hit those revenue targets, they either don't get paid or their payment is delayed until those revenue targets come back up. So I think Sheri's probably has some examples as well, right?
Yeah, our two large tax projects were also benefits-based. One was PY savings, and the other was revenue generating, and those two have been two of our most successful projects, and it's because the contractor has to share in the state's risk. It's not the state just paying for a system, it's the vendor getting paid on producing a system that meets the objectives they've agreed to.
Yes, those performance-based contracts are a win-win normally.
Yes.
But, and I have to compliment both of your departments, well, and OSI too, that when I hold up, when a customer asks me about who they can look at, what projects they can look at, and why they should look at them for best practices, I always hold up these three departments because they have always done a great job and they have a really good infrastructure set up. You know, the foundation that we use when we build a house and then we build on top of that foundation, you know, EDD and franchise and OSI have really a good foundation. And then they just build on top of that and re-stabilize everything as they're moving up. It's pretty incredible that they've done such great work in procurement areas with and without our help. So.
Well, and you don't get to just do a performance-based procurement. You've got to go and do a lot of justifications and get support of all of the control agencies before you can go forward with the procurement like that. And EDD and Franchise Tax Board are good at doing that. I don't have the experience of doing a performance-based procurement, but I know if I had to do one, I would be contacting these two here and working with STPD. If my customer said that, you know, we want to look at performance-based procurement, then we'd have to start that planning process very early on to do that, because you would have to include that in your FSR, or with us, with our federal partner, we'd have to include it in, you know, an advanced planning document to have those discussions. So,
and Department of Finance is very involved in the comp models now. So they are
compensation model.
They do a lot of work now on the compensation models along with the customer.
So I think we're down to just sort of 1 or 2 minutes.
Yeah, so just one other thing based on performance, and this is on the other side of it, where it's not a performance-based contract, but you have withholdings in your contract. So the contractor, they have their deliverables, you accepted it, you'll pay them for it, about 90% or less, and withhold the other amount until the whole system is in place. And then after the whole system's in place and functioning, then they can have that 10% withhold. So that also adds some protection and reduces the state's risk, you know, depending on how much, you know, the contract is. 10% could be significant. So we typically use that in all of our contracts as a protection to the state.
Well, I think you have to if it's deliverable based. So
Does anybody have a last question before we wrap up? We're just about out of time. Okay, well, then I would hope you would join me in thanking the panel. This was a very interesting conversation. I think I learned some things. I think everybody sort of had a good time. So please join me in thanking our panel. They did a great job.
Yay!